Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them. Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up top.
Oh my God! Big crash. Oh my goodness, half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh no!
That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
God, what?
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second round of this season's iRacing V8 Supercar Series, where tonight's battlefield is one of the most historic on iRacing, as well as being one of the most synonymous circuits with this category of V8 Supercar racing. Reading through the winners list around this 12-turn, 4.4-kilometer circuit provides a who's who of iRacing Supercars competition. Shane Van Gisbergen, Scott McLaughlin, and Chaz Mostert are all winners here in both the real and the virtual world. But when it comes to the simulated version of Phillip Island, this is very much Madison Down territory with the currently unassailable number of race wins. But tonight, the crown of the fastest driver around the island is once again up for grabs. With this series' explosive opening first round at Mount Panorama, we can expect some brilliant scenes tonight as the field scraps for those vital points early at the start of the championship. I'm Bo Albert, back once again in the commentary booth, and alongside me isn't Zach Hanlon, because Zach has decided after his 6 hours of the Glen podium that he is above us mere mortals and is probably out driving in Melbourne in his BMW, and of course not using his indicators. But who needs him when we have Ross Rizzo in the comms box, and it is a pleasure to have him here, because tonight isn't going to be a short race by any means. Weighing in at 33 laps, we can expect this race to nudge towards the hour mark, which means we have plenty to look out for here tonight, Ross.
Oh, absolutely. It went off at Bathurst. We were absolutely treated to an absolute spectacle to start off this championship. And the top three from that race alone gave us plenty of talking points. A flawless race from Brady Myers and a fiery exchange between Thomas McMillan and Cooper Webster. Cooper, as we remember, is defending his championship, and McMillan with an amazing turn of form that really took the fight to Brady Myers in that last race. I'm really keen to see what the rest of the fight of this championship is going to look like.
Well, I can give you a little bit of a snippet of how that championship picture is going to look at in the next few rounds, because in qualifying at the moment, top 4 cars within half a tenth of a second. That is absolutely ridiculous for these drivers out on track at the moment. They're doing a fantastic job as the drivers just go around completing their second lap. Michael Taliantich is rounding the final corner here at Phillip Island Circuit. Of course, very cool conditions here at the moment. So we are seeing some very quick lap times in the 128s, which is not what you normally see. Taliantich not able to improve on his second lap. And that's a thing you usually do see in these V8 Supercars, Ross, is you get that one first lap that is very strong. That second, though, is a little bit harder to back the lap time up with.
Yeah, exactly. The second lap only really counts if you made a mess of the first one. But I guess it goes to show, not just specifically with the V8 Supercar that you can only get one lap, this track is notorious for shockingly bad tyre wear, which means the strategies are going to be very, very difficult for these drivers to work out. Do we go for the undercut, or do they go for the longer lasting advantage and stay out longer on that first stint?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different challenges, and a lot of different drivers are coming out with different fuel numbers. Our director, Jay Kennedy, for this one said that the fuel window would be around lap 14 to lap 18. I was talking to some of my Altus teammates just before this race. They said lap 10 all the way to lap 23. So if that's true, we have a very large pit window, which means there's a lot of room to try those different strategies, like you said. And we are expecting the drivers to be taking tyres in the stop, as well as around at least 18 litres of fuel, which is quite a margin that you can't fuel save. So a one mandatory stop for all the drivers. Interesting to note that there's still currently 2 drivers that have not actually even bothered to set a lap time at the moment. So 2 drivers maybe doing a bit of a last to first challenge, which is tough for them because this circuit can be a little tricky to pass at the best of times, Ross.
Yeah, you definitely got that right. Speaking of passing opportunities, we have one down into Honda hairpin where you need to be very, very committed. And we've seen a lot of work, a lot of interesting lines through Siberia, the very next corner, to try and finish off the move. If not, they have MG to try and make a pass down that very difficult downhill braking zone.
Yeah, well, that's a very tricky one, and I've driven the V8 a few times around here, and of course, I have no talent, so I spent more time in the grass at MG than on the tarmac, so for these drivers, it is going to be a bit tricky, but the weather conditions are playing in their favor just a little bit. 17 degrees ambient and track temp as well, but they do have 22-kilometer-an-hour winds, so that could throw them off just a little bit as they make their way into the very quick turn number 1 as well, where you do put so much load and pressure on those tires through such a high-speed corner. But we will go to our qualifying results on screen at the moment, and it's going to be Jake Burton taking pole position by the most narrow of margins over his former teammate Sam Blacklock, now on 2 different teams, so interesting to see how that one will go. Lining up in 3rd place is Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, who has been extremely quick in some of the earlier races. How will his form go, especially with the very quick Andrew Gilliam just behind in 4th as well. 3rd row of the grid goes to Brady Myers and Harley Haber. Wayne Burke starts from 7th place, a good start for him with Jack Boyd alongside, with Michael Taliantich and Brett Loxton your top 10.
In 11th place, we have Chris Coxhead, who was one of our biggest movers last race, so watch for him from 11th. A massive 0.02 of a second behind, we have Jordan Ross for Evolution Racing Team. Right behind him, he's got an Evolution Racing Team teammate of Kyle Stokes to back him up. Then we have Damian Johnston in 14th, Brian Borg rounding out the top 15, Corey Preston in 16th, Mullen McMullen, Sean Thompson, who's hoping to back up a strong performance from last week, Job Stewart and Greg Sharp rounding out top 20.
11th row of the grid belongs to Steve Jansen and Guy Leach, so those guys will be looking to move their way forward, and 2 very close lap times for them, with Craig Jones in 23rd being your last car to set a lap time in that very nice looking 111 racing car. So one of the more outlandish ones, I have to say, quite a nice livery. But it's going to be what Lee Day is looking at for quite a while, because he starts from 24th, just behind Craig Jones. And Christian Smart is going to have to play it smart if he wants to make his way up this field, which is 25 cars with a really high strength of field, actually higher than we saw at Mount Panorama, 3.9k soft, which means we have some very large points on offer for the drivers as we get the 15-second board to race start. And it's going to be a very tricky one as well. We've seen Phillip Island cause a little bit of chaos in the past few races. Of course, it is a very fast turn number 1 as the revs begin to rise on round number 2 of the 2019 Season 3 Official Series Championship. And we are lights out, and away we go. It's a great start there by Jake Burton. Manages to get a great launch. Sam Blacklock trying to follow us behind. As you can see, it's already bunching up positions 3 and 4 as they make their way now into the very quick turn number 1. Will they all make an opportunistic dive up there by one of the Mark 1 Esports cars? There's also contact. Andrew Gilliam gets all kinds of out of shape and lucky to hold onto it. The TTL Esports car side by side into the second corner as well, a long way around the outside to make that happen, so it could be a bit dicey. You can see there the car's getting quite loose, and check up as well, and Jack Boyd had to slam on the anchors to avoid getting into the back of the Mark 1 Esports car as well, as they make their way now into the heavy braking zone of turn number 1. Jake Burton still leading comfortably ahead of Sam Blacklock. So they all Constantine, it's a Honda hairpin, and Michael Taliantich there had a little bit of contact, but it looks like so far, Ross, the entire field's through cleanly.
Oh, there was a lot of door banging in the mid-pack there, just trying to squabble and get their positions right. You're on the edge the whole time, even when you're not really pushing, so it's very easy to find yourself in the door of another car, even though you don't intend so.
Yeah, we can see that Kyle Stokes actually doing a little bit of lawn mowing there through Hayshed, so not the ideal start for the Evolution Racing Team driver, and he's actually stuck on the inside as drivers try and now make the run on the inside of him into MG corner. You can see he gets very, very close, almost contact again for this mid-pack, who are not sorting themselves out too cleanly. Still a lot of side-by-side racing So they're costing themselves a fair chunk of time. But out front, it is still Jake Burton who is leading, but only by half a second at the moment. And with the high wind speeds we do have here for this 33-lap race, that means the slipstream will be pretty powerful in towards turn number 1. And Sam Blacklock already gets that gap from half a second to 0.3 of a second. So 0.2 gained in that slipstream. That's worth noting as the race goes on, as the field makes their way onto lap number 2. And looks like so far all the drivers still in this race, which is good to see. And the mid-pack finally manages to settle itself out, which is what you have to do with this race length, isn't it, Ross? Because it is a long race, so you have to get into that rhythm nice and early.
Yes, but it's extremely hard to do so around this track. There's so much grip available on the track, but not quite so much in the tyres or the car. And of course, when you're battling other cars, it can be very easy to trip over each other, as I alluded to earlier. So the main thing is to try and stick with the draft. Try and stay with the cars ahead of you so you don't lose the train, and see what opportunities come up later in the race, because tyre wear will be a factor come by lap 7 or 8 or so.
Yeah, we are expecting the tyre wear to be pretty damn bad here at Phillip Island, so expect the drivers to be taking tyres in their pit stop. It'd be very risky if you were to choose not to elect anything, as it's all gone a little bit wrong there for Wayne Burke. Contact at MG, and he's been sent down the order. Jackson Suslan-Harlow was involved in that as well, but it was Wayne Burke who came off the worst, looking on board at the moment. Car still driving straight, but that's not how he would have wanted to start this race. You see there's almost a Constantina at the back there as Jackson Suslan-Harlow now under all kinds of pressure from Harley Haber. He defends the inside extremely aggressively. Haber has to go to the outside, and Jackson Suslan-Harlow moving over just the smallest bit as they dive their way to turn number 1 around the outside. Goes Harley Haber, a very bold move, and somehow the grip is out there, which gives him the insight into turn number 2. And you can see Andrew Gilliam trying to make an advantage of that as well, as the door is quickly shut by the number 3 car as they make their way on the exit. That was a fantastic move there, Ross.
Watching Jackson Suslan-Harlow and Harley Haber is a thing that we've gotten used to in the Australian Online Supercar Championship, but previously when Jackson was part of the GRM squad and Harley Haber part of Redback Racing Team. Good to see there's no love lost as we go to a modem simulation replay with that incident with Wayne Burke.
Yep, so talk us through here, Ross. What do you see from the driver's perspective as we look on board from Jackson Suslan-Harlow?
So he's kind of gone for a gap that was okay, so it looks like he's just gotten in a little too deep. I'm not sure if he really intended to commit to the move. He second-guessed himself and then ultimately made the wrong decision by deciding to commit when the right decision would have been to hold back.
Yeah,
oh, actually, sorry,
yeah.
there is. There is a little bit. Yeah, there was a little bit of help, because you did notice the sudden speed up from Jackson Suslan-Harlow, and there is your culprit there, Harley Haber, just getting ever so lightly into the back of JSH, sending Wayne Burke around.
Well, we knew Harley Haber was a pretty solid race car driver, but turns out he's all right at snooker as well, as that was a perfect pot there for Wayne Burke. Unfortunately, didn't quite get into the hole he would have wanted, and that's going to be a bit of a disaster, so has to watch out for the queue, because that white car in front is Brett Loxton, and we know how racy he can be against other cars as they all file their way through. And you can actually still see that Jack Boyd getting very racy behind Jackson Suslan-Harlow, and we did see in previous races before this main strength of field race, Jackson was very, very fast, so it's a bit of a surprise to see him struggling as much as he is at the moment, as that's getting a little bit racy up the front as well. Jake Burton is beginning to just break away a little bit. 1.2 seconds is the margin, but Sam Blacklock not able to escape Andrew Gilliam or Brady Myers, as we see a pass at the back of the field there as Joe Stewart makes his way past Sean Thompson in that brand new team for him. So Sean Thompson in another new team, of course, a bit of a regular scene, it has to be said, with the Sean switching teams around, but nonetheless, Joe Stewart getting the better of him this time around.
Sean actually being a driver rather than a team owner for once, and it seems to be going quite well. He's running there in 16th place and had a great showing last time out. Oh, big lock up into MG. You won't get away with that too often, because as we've always alluded to, these tyres do chew themselves up pretty quickly around here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it could be a little bit tough for him, but we'll see how he does go over the next few laps. As you can see there, the leaders making their way through that amazing final corner, and Wayne Burke trying to do a bit of a recovery drive here, looking at the back of the Roar fencing car in front. Of course, that's Brett Loxton in the Zuva racing car. 1/10 of a second is the margin. Unfortunately, 1/10 is not getting past Brett Loxton's car, so we'll have to keep staring at that for a little bit longer, just like Andrew Gilliam has to keep looking at the back of the Logitech G Altus Esports car, and he's getting all kinds of sideways as well, as he wants to set up a move into Honda corner, but that's such a tricky thing to do through that southern loop section, is to get the run, to give yourself that opportunity into Honda.
Seeing Brady Myers continue to put pressure on Gilliam, as Gilliam is continually pushing pressure on Blacklock. Well, regardless of who's putting pressure on who, it is Jake Burton skipping away out in front, who is no stranger to this track at all. So if these guys want any chance of catching the number 2 of Jake Burton, they really need to start working together, get into that rhythm, and see if they can chase him down.
Yeah, well, that's going to be interesting to see, because at the moment he has the fastest lap of the race by some 0.6 of a second, which is not a small margin either way you look at it. As you can see there, Andrew Gilliam there taking a slightly different line into MG, and that just gave a bit of an advantage to Brady Myers there in that number 6 car, but nothing able to happen there in terms of position swaps for those drivers as they continue making their way through this gorgeous circuit. The track temperature is gone up by a degree at the moment, so not too significant, but if that continues to rise, as it does about to hit 8 a.m. local time here at Phillip Island, that could begin to get a little bit interesting as the tires go off, and of course the track getting a little bit less grippy as the race goes on. But you can see here the wheel work involved in getting a V8 supercar around this Phillip Island circuit, with Brady Myers just trying to hook up the run through Southern Loop and just get the power on, just not able to do it as well as he would have wanted to set the move up. And the Honda has all gone wrong for Wayne Burke, and again for the second time he finds himself looking in the wrong direction, and that time it was with Brett Loxton. So we'll get a Motum simulation replay up on screen as Wayne Burke demoted to 23rd position, and also Brady Myers now up to the inside of Andrew Gilliam, but doesn't make the move stick as well. So it's all going on at the moment, but we'll stick with this replay and see what has happened here. You can see Wayne Burke with just the smallest overlap contact made and a very forceful move, and it's just a clumsy incident in the end, and well, Talyancic benefited from it, as did Jordan Ross, but just a very clumsy incident there. As you can see, Brady Myers with a huge dive up inside of Andrew Gilliam and made the move stick initially, but wasn't quite able to get the run all the way through into Siberia, and actually contact made it, which is why he was sent all the way to the outside of Siberia. So out of nowhere, the race really turning on its head, as Chris Coxhead also found his way past Brett Loxton as well. So a lot of moves happening at the moment, and actually Brett Loxton has a fair chunk of damage, so neither party really came out of that well.
No, not at all. As you said, Wayne was starting to force the move, but Loxton wasn't willing to give him the space. But it looks like they both paid a heavy price for that, with Brett going to pay a price for the long term with that damage. It's going to hurt him in the straight line, and it exposes him to Corey Preston behind him, as well as Mullen McMullen, Kyle Stokes, Job Stewart, and Sean Thompson, who will catch up fairly quickly if they can work together.
Yeah, well, they should, so we'll have to see how it goes. As you can see there, hasn't really broken up the front of your field too much. In fact, the train's actually got a bit larger, with Harley Haber, Jackson Suzlin Harlow, and Jack Boyd all biting themselves into that battle, as Corey Preston finds a move up the inside of Brett Loxton there. Not the cleanest move I've ever seen, but Marlon McMullen, of course, a series champion in this category, trying to go with him as well, but not able to happen at the moment. So well, actually still trying it at Siberia, but trying to get the power down is so hard, as they're going to think about going side by side through Hayshed. Not a corner you want to go. Contact made on the entrance as well, as Carl Stokes sticks his nose up the inside as well. So it's getting very racy at the moment. The long way around the outside for Marlon McMullen. The grip just not there. Carl Stokes now thinks about the outside into MG. Late on the brakes. Contact made. Bye-bye, Brett Loxton. You're going sideways and around an MG corner, and he is dumped. And contact also made between Sean Thompson and the 15 car, so that's Brian Borg, I believe. So it's all going on at the moment in your track, and I have to say, that spin for Brett Loxton puts him right back into the clutches of Wayne Burke, and I have to wonder how this is going to go as we look at a replay once again. Ross, how did you see it from your perspective?
It was good racing up until the great racing up until the moment they made contact. Obviously, it's very traditional to kind of hold that line to hold the advantage, but then a little bit of overcommitment and it all goes wrong. And then the concertina effect of cars checking up behind who are doing their own thing, it just gets very messy very, very quickly.
It certainly does, but now Wayne Burke and Brett Loxton are back together on track, which is very interesting, as Jackson Susan Harlow finds himself involved in a fight with Harley Haber and gets that spot made. So for Jackson Susan Harlow, another spot gained. What he had lost 3 spots from the start of the race, now only losing 2 as he gains a place back. But the TTL Esports car probably not the pace that he could have possibly wanted. And we have actually had a bit more contact between, who would you believe, Wayne Burke and Brett Loxton. And I have to wonder if this is perhaps a little bit intentional. Not too happy about what's going on. As Wayne Burke looks up the inside, that was just a monster lockup. And I don't know if that was intentional as such, but I don't think there's going to be a redress there either.
Intentional or not, we'll probably best move on and maybe look at this battle occurring in the top 5. There's still this really interesting lap time battle going on between Harley Haber, Brady Myers, and Jackson Susel Harlow, as they looks like they're unable to really reel in Jake Burton, so they're going to have to start squabbling over the podium positions to try and maximize their championship points.
Well, yeah, of course, early in the championship, getting those points on the board is what wins you a championship. Of course, not going for those wins necessarily, but just every round banking those points can definitely lead to a championship result. As you can see, Andrew Gilliam there going for a little bit of contact there. That's the most unideal place to have contact into Stoner Curve, but nonetheless holds on to the spot against Brady Myers. But these two beginning not to play so nice. Of course, we saw Brady a couple laps before make the move just about stick on Andrew Gilliam, but contact in the Siberia sent Brady back behind the number 10 car. So Brady just beginning to get a little bit impatient. Of course, Brady was our round 1 winner at Phillip Island with a fantastic drive as well. Did it from pole position. Didn't quite get the Grand Slam with the fastest lap, with Cooper Webster taking that fastest lap at Bathurst. But with no Cooper, Brady Myers knows he's got a great chance at extending his championship lead.
Wants to maximize those points, he needs to get ahead of Andrew Gilliam by the end of the race. Right now, it looks like they are dropping off Sam Blacklock, so this could be an interesting chance for Brady. He's looked faster and more comfortable over the last few laps, so I'm not so convinced he's looking at Andrew. He's looking more at Sam ahead.
Well, that definitely could be it. Of course, Brady and Sam, of course, were very, very close drivers. Used to do a lot of hosts together, used to have a bit of a fun rivalry. But are now in 2 very different teams. Of course, they always were, but now 2 very different teams. Interesting to see how that battle could play out between Brady and Sam, but nonetheless, before he can get to Sam, there is a bright blue Pursuit Sim Racing car and a whole heap of oversteer on the exit of Southern Loop, and he's got his teammate right behind him. And I've got to wonder if there's going to be any kind of team orders here. It's very early in the championship, so you would not think so at all. But if Jackson Susel Harlow, we know how aggressive he can be. If he thinks he has any chance at getting past Brady, I reckon he'll take it.
Oh, I doubt there's team orders here. Let them race. You can kind of hoping they're hearing in the chanting in the background as the racing is certainly what Brady Myers is giving Andrew Gilliam right now. Got a great exit out of Siberia. He looks a little bit too far back for a dive at MG, but a move looks like it's gonna sorry, as I mix my words up, more of a when not if situation. Gilliam goes a little defensive. This could be the chance he needs coming out of the final corner and onto the main straight, as that momentum just goes nowhere when you take that narrow line.
Yeah, absolutely. You could almost watch the accordion effect there as they came through that turn number 11 there, winding their way through the long, never-ending turn number 12 and make their way onto the front straight. I don't know if the TTL Esports car is close enough, as the Mark 1 Esports car there just does a little bit of scenery work there as well, but nonetheless the TTL Esports car will have a little bit of a look into turn number 1, but nothing more than a look. As you can see, the beautiful scenic shot there as they all make their way through, and again more lawn mowing. So I don't know what lawn mowing company is possibly sponsoring this event, but nonetheless really good to see them all go in there. But we do have our first pit stops beginning to take place, and about a lap earlier than we perhaps would have expected, but nonetheless Brian Borg and Brett Loxton have decided it's the time to pit. I'm not so surprised by Brett Loxton, of course, with that damage to his car. But interesting to see how the leaders will respond to this over the next few laps, as it's side by side between Brady Myers and Andrew Gilliam. Once again, a lot more room given on turn-in by Brady Myers. Doesn't want contact to happen for the second time in a row. Tries to get the power down, though. He's got the smallest of overlaps, but an overlap is what he has, though. So given room by Andrew Gilliam through Hayshed. Not so much room given by Brady on the return, though. Contact just about through Hayshed. Has to do it the long way around the outside, but if he can keep it there, he'll have a shot into MG. Deep on the brakes, and Andrew Gilliam overcooks it a little bit. Contact again between the two of them, as now Jackson Susel Harlow tries to buy into this fight. jumps on the brakes nice and early to not get into the side of his teammate, but makes himself vulnerable now to Harley Haber, who's going around the outside of turn number 12. A very tricky pass to make happen. As you can see, that contact made again, and lawnmowering once again with don't go 3 wide down the front straight, almost considering it, and now they're side by side as Jack Boyd tries to capitalize on all his door banging going on in his battle pack. Brady not able to make the move stick on Andrew Gilliam, but what can Jack Boyd do around the outside of one of the TTL Esports car? And there was not much room given at all there, I have to say, and contact given, and bye-bye goes Jackson Suzlin-Harlow off into the weeds, has to rejoin onto the circuit, and loses a spot to Michael Taliancic, and Jordan Ross also going to try and make something happen out of this as well, side by side through Stoner Curve. And I think Jackson should probably give this one up, but he's going to fight it all the way into Honda. Deep on the brakes, grass probably on his tires as well. You can see the body language of the car not too suited at the moment, not much grip at all, but makes the move stick. But once again, the race just going off at every single possible opportunity, Ross.
Yeah, I don't think quit is part of Jackson's vocabulary. He really pushed as hard as he could through that one, and he's now paid the price. Just goes to show he can have lots and lots of space and clear air and when he's comfortable, but battling in other cars, it's a whole different ball game where experience and patience really pays off. And right now, Jackson is getting bitten at every possible opportunity whenever he makes the slightest of errors and misjudgments.
Well, of course, a very young driver and, of course, not unfamiliar to racing, and he's not unfamiliar to pitting as well, as he dives into the pits at the end of lap number 12. Jordan Ross follows in tow as well, so those two will be the first of our real front runners to dive into the pits. But Jackson Suzlin-Harlow is pretty young in regards to some of the other drivers on the field, so I'm not saying there's a bit of immaturity there perhaps, but not quite the same experience, like you did mention, as some of the other drivers. And having that patience in battle packs like that can be oh so critical at the best of times. But nonetheless, we'll see if this early pit stop does play into their hands. But the pit window, we are being told, is pretty large, all the way out to lap 23. So we don't know if that will play out into their hands early or over the next few laps. So we'll have to wait and see. You can see that they exit the pits and it is status quo, but it's not status quo because there goes Damian Johnston, I believe that was, and he goes past, but he has not taken his pit stop yet. But it does mean that Jackson Suzlin-Harlow comes out in traffic, which is far from ideal.
Well, currently, Harley Haber, and Michael Taliancic are battling at the moment. So this is costing them time. Haber nearly got into the rear of, I believe it was Jack Boyd. So, am I speaking? Is this a bit of time travel or just a bit of deja vu? But these guys still getting into each other. Jack Boyd, also one of the young up and comers in this series, very aggressive and has been very impressive of late.
Yeah, absolutely. As Michael Taliancic now decides to come into the pits, which is a little bit odd. Normally, he's the absolute last driver to dive into the pits, but nonetheless, we'll see how this pays out for him as race leader Jake Burton continuing to set some of the quicker laps off the field so far, and just that time around 0.3 of a second quicker than Sam Blacklock in position number 2, who actually understeers quite wide through turn number 2, keeps it on the black stuff, but not the ideal line for him. As you can see there, Jake Burton at 29.9, only car to dip below the 90-second bracket. As you can see there, Sam Blacklock some 0.3 of a second slower, so not ideal. But Brady Myers, their on-screen championship leader, now has a bit more room to have to catch Andrew Gilliam, and just once again not able to find a way past. He's been trying. You cannot deny he has been trying, but it just has not happened for him so far.
Looks like he'll need to open the strategy book to try and find a way past. He should have been able to do it by now. Most people would have thought, given his earlier pace and the fact that Gilliam is no longer getting the draft from Sam. So I'm wondering what the issue is for Brady. Maybe he does need to make a change in the strategy. Maybe he needs to go for the undercut, or maybe pressure Andrew into thinking he needs to cover him off with an early pit stop.
Well, it's a good play, and of course, if you can't pass them on track, passing them in strategy is a good way to do it. As you can see, they slide their way through, and you said maybe he has to pressure Andrew Gilliam into a pit stop. Well, what about this Andrew Gilliam, third place runner on track at the moment? Brakes for the yellow cones and on the pit speed limiter as he makes his way down at a horrific 53 kilometers an hour, a horrifically slow pit lane. And when you've been driving around for 15 laps like he has so far, it feels like an absolute eternity trundling down that pit lane. as he looks for his pit box, and you can see Guy Leach there on screen in the V8 Sleuth Esports car. Nice to see him doing so well in the top 6, despite pit stops not quite fully playing out at the moment. And then Lee Day in your top 10. Of course, he started on the back row of the grid, so a great job by him to make his way forward so far. As again, Jake Burton, the only car below that 90-second bracket, so he is in a league of his own at the moment. But we've both been in that situation, Ross, where you've been leading by a comfortable margin, just easy to, break out that gap to second place. But if you lose that focus for 1 second, it's so easy to throw it all away.
100%. If you make a mistake, it tends to overheat the tyres. But an interesting development here. Michael Taliancic, Andrew Gilliam's teammate, has somehow jumped him in the pit stop. So either Michael has had an incredibly fast pit stop, or Andrew has made a mistake somewhere in that pit lane.
Well, the difference in pit stops was 9/10 of a second between the two, but curiously, actually 1.2 seconds quicker in the pit stop for Michael Taliancic. So maybe just being a little bit braver on the brakes into the pit box, or just releasing that pit limiter just a little bit early. It's hard to say. But for Michael Taliancic, gaining that position, well, that's crucial points for him as Sam Blacklock, Brady Myers, Jack Boyd, and Harley Haber all dive into the pits on the one lap. So they leave Jake Burton out to dry. But that's probably not too much of an issue. He has the buffer to keep running those laps. But I'm curious now to see if any of these top 4 guys have been pitting. And actually that was Brady Myers missing his pit box and had to reverse. So I was going to say, have any of these guys been fuel saving to jump one another? If Brady Myers was fuel saving to get past Andrew Gilliam, he just blew it all there as he broke into that pit box. And Sam Blacklock out incredibly early compared to the rest of his competitors there. 16.4 seconds in the stop, but that is still 1.7 seconds quicker as they're all rejoining. And Andrew Gilliam there is well ahead at the moment. He has completely jumped so many of these guys. Jackson Suzlin Harley was one of them. And really only Sam Blacklock was the only driver that Andrew Gilliam and Michael Taliancic didn't jump there.
Wow, that was really amazing to see how those positions just swapped then. It looked like Brady was on the right trajectory. Now he's behind his teammate of Jackson, who's been in the wars so far.
Yeah, so that's a horrific play there by Brady Myers, of course. It might have been the right play, but overshooting that pit box can be so crucial, of course. It's easy to forget that drivers are always looking for that extra 0.5 of a second on the racetrack. But if you forget to practice your pit lane, you can easily lose 2 seconds in a single go. So just being able to practice that regularly and not making those mistakes can be so crucial. And for Brady Myers, championship leader, let's not forget, at this early stage of the championship, that's not what you need to be doing, because he has made himself, have to work so much harder for this second phase of the race. As your top 5 all come into the pits. Burton, Leach, Jones, Sharp, and Lee Day as well. So the field should be just about cleansed, apart from Damian Johnston at the end of this lap. So we'll see how this all pans out. Of course, Jake Burton will easily be out in your race lead, but any of these guys manage to shake their way into the top few positions. Doesn't look like it is Greg Sharp and all of those drivers still on the jacks at the moment. And he actually lost the spot there to the driver of Guy Leach. So bit of an interesting shuffle around oppositions there as well, but your top 5 after the pit stops are Burton, Blacklock, Taliancic, Gilliam, and Jackson, Suzlin, Harlow. So the big loser there by 3 spots in the end was Brady Myers, so a nightmare for Brady.
But the big gainer was Michael Taliancic. It's weird to see Michael pit so early, as we're so used to seeing him pit late. But this worked an absolute treat for him at Bathurst as well. He pitted the moment the pit window opened and jumped a heap of his rivals. And his pace looks pretty solid at the moment. So it's going to be difficult to be shuffled out of that top 5 spots. The top 5 spots, given he's already up 6 positions. He's having an absolutely fantastic race.
Yeah, he absolutely is, but I was actually just going to highlight his pace just a little bit, because of course, out of the top few guys in this field, most of them qualified within the top 5 or so, or the top 6. Taliancic just qualified down in position number 9, so maybe his outright pace isn't quite there as well. I just saw a huge move in the background happening between Harley Haber as he dives up the inside of Chris Coxhead. And Chris was, I think, just trying to survive there and completely dived off the racing circuit to make sure that pass happened cleanly. So a swap of positions there, but for Jackson Suzlin and Harlow, he's lost a bit of ground, but trying to close up onto the back of Andrew Gilliam could be a little tricky, because out of these top 10 drivers at the moment, he has by far the most worn tyres by the form of 2 laps. over Andrew Gilliam, so that's not ideal for him. Michael Taliansic on 1 lap older tyres than Andrew Gilliam as well, so a few different tyre strategies could come to bite them at the end of lap 33.
Indeed, but right now the gamble is paying off, at least for Michael, but for the other guys, they're now in a really difficult spot because regardless of their tyre advantage, they're going to have to use that up trying to get the track position back, and that means taking risks, that means locking tyres, and that's a big dive from Brady Myers down the inside. As he just lights up the rear. He had it all but done and now has to set it up all over again.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second, Ross. Do you think at the moment Brady Myers just getting a little bit too hot-headed and maybe just cracking under a little bit of pressure here?
I don't know. It seemed like it was smooth sailing the last time out at Bathurst, but I know if anything, he'd be better at Phillip Island, so he's probably expecting another big result, as that's a big dive down to the inside. He's made that one a little bit better, but not quite got the power down. Oh no! He gets served by Harley Haber. He just saves it. Great save. Jordan Ross takes evasive action, mows some more grass, but rejoins the circuit safely.
Well, you know what? During this race, I think being in the gravel trap probably is the safest part of the track to be, but we'll get a modem simulation replay of this enormous send by the SimWorks racing car. As you can see there, just tried to make it happen. Had to straighten the steering out quite early, and I wouldn't put that blame on the Mark 1 Esports car. I think Brady there just trying to squeeze a little bit too much there, and Jordan Ross doing his bit to help the mowing here at Phillip Island, save costs for the actual circuit organisers. We can see a bit of a battle happening through turn number 1 between Steve Jansen and the driver of Greg Sharp. So they're fighting their way into turn number 1, and also a battle pack up ahead between Brian Borg and Craig Jones side by side out of Southern Loop. And they managed to sort themselves out, but we have Wayne Burke in that fight as well. And we know how racy he is, looking for a move on the Isuzu racing car. Thinks better of it at the moment, but you can see it's still continuing into Honda corner, almost 3 wide there, almost contact. And they're still fighting this, and around goes Brian Borg there, and he will go visit the scenery, and Wayne Burke continues the fight all the way into Siberia, and Craig Jones just a little bit too deep into Siberia, but makes it happen. And out of nowhere, it's up at the front of the field as well, because I'm hearing that Jack Boyd had contact made and almost spun around and almost contact again into MG. They do survive an MG, but let's get a replay of what went on there. As you can see there, Jack Boyd just under a lot of pressure from the Mark 1 Esports car, and just a bit of a bump there. I don't think that was intentional, just hard racing, and Harley probably just didn't quite see where the nose of his car was. And no harm, no foul. I'm going to put that down into my books, but you can see still more battling happening on throughout this track. It is great to see that the drivers making it really count for the entire 33 laps.
We're seeing what this circuit does best. It chops and changes with the strategy, with the way the cars and drivers get into the flow of this second stint. We're seeing them start to topple over each other, but we're also seeing some really brave driving that allows them to get back into play.
Yeah, absolutely, as we can see at the moment. I'm looking at Jack Boyd, who was under a lot of pressure again from Chris Coxhead, who has dived up the inside so late, plows into the side of the 13 car. They both stay on track, but that was not the cleanest move I've ever seen. And we'll see how that does go as Jack Boyd tries to make something happen. That all happened because out of Southern Loop, it was just a huge oversteer moment for Jack Boyd. And we'll get a modem simulation replay up on screen at the moment out of Southern Loop. He just got all kinds of sideways, and you can see the V8 Sleuth car closing millimeter by millimeter, thought about the inside and locks the rear brakes right about now, and bang into the side of the 13 car. They both stayed on track, but a few little bits of pain exchanged, I think.
Coxhead very wide at Lukey Heights. He has the inside for MG. Oh, that is commitment from Jack Boyd to go around the outside, and that allows him to set it up on the inside coming onto the main straight. Position well defended.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great drive there from both of them as they made their way through. And Jack Boyd's car looks like it's struggling quite a lot in straight line speed, so that could be where Chris Coxhead is making his advantage work, but we'll see how they all go through into Southern Loop as the field continues to chop changes as Guy Leach goes for a big dive up the inside of Carl Stokes into turn number 1. Does he make it out onto the other side? He does. So move done there by Guy Leach. A great move there and a lot more passing into turn number 1 than I've seen in previous years. So I don't know if it's the high winds that we do have here today at 22 kilometers an hour, but turn 1 out of nowhere is a great overtaking opportunity.
Who was that in the TTL Falcon? That was Brady Myers again, trying to force his way through. He's made his way back through past Chris Coxhead, so he's hoping to get a move on to pass Jack Boyd. But it goes to show that you really need a lot more pace than the car ahead of you to make a move. And we know Brady is certainly fast enough to be on the podium here, but is barely in the top 10.
Yeah, and that's one of the more disappointing things as a racing driver is when you get a bad finish when you know you've got a quick car. As you see there, a fantastic shot of the cars just getting so low to the ground through that big compression on the braking zone of MG. A bit of a wiggle there by the 13 car, and just look at how close there is, almost contact, as they're just pushing each other through turn number 12, trying to get the run happen. And I said turn number 1 would be a great overtaking opportunity. We're about to see just how great it could be. Is that 3 wide across the start-finish line, pushed almost to the pit wall. This is 3 wide now, only 2 wide, as the TTL car had to get out of it, and so late on the brakes there. Can he pull it up by the driver of Chris Coxhead and serves it out the other side by side still, with Jack Boyd trying to hold it around the outside of the southern loop. But who can get the power down, and how will this affect the runs going into Honda corner? It was Jack Boyd who got the worst run between himself and Brady Myers. So Brady going to have to hang tough around the outside, almost into the grass through Stoner Curve as they fight their way through. There's a battle in the background as well, but we'll focus on this for now as Brady Myers tries to make something happen. He just can't pass cars today. And we also saw in the background Mal McMullen fighting with Corey Preston. And I believe that was Corey Preston trying to make something happen on McMullen. Not able to do it just yet, though.
McMullen is up 6 positions from his rather low qualifying spot of 11th, but looks like it's sort of coming good. He'll want to get into the top 5 though, but I don't think he's got the means to be able to do it. Just ahead of him is Jordan Ross, who's had a relatively quiet race with the exception of that excursion, but any of these 3 can gain up to 3 positions at the drop of a hat with the way the 3 ahead of him are fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll stick with this battle on screen at the moment, but just worth noting at the moment that for your race leaders, the gap between Blacklock Taliance and Andrew Gilliam has all just compacted a little bit, with a Jackson Susan Harlow not far behind as well, as you saw that on screen. But we'll look at Jack Boyd at the moment as he stares down the back of the Zuva racing car into towards turn number 1. Nowhere near close enough to make a move stick now, but we'll see how close they're willing to get as they fire their way into the first few corners. And actually Jackson Susan Harlow makes a move stick on Andrew Gilliam, so we'll see how that has happened. I must say I did miss that a little bit, and it was actually just a bit of a bumper to the back there of Andrew Gilliam, so pushed him just a little bit wide there, and they're fighting it into Honda corner as well, and Jackson Susan Harlow only just holds onto that. But we'll get a replay on screen now as you're looking at the back of Andrew Gilliam, and you can see that Falcon right behind. There's the bump, just push him a little bit wider, and another bump as well, actually a secondary bump just to force him wide. And I'm going to call that fair racing. I think if you're going to do a bump and run on someone, that's about as clean as a bump and run gets.
Yeah, we saw a similar exchange between Madison Down and Jared Filsell in the online Premier Series. All the gloves were off, but it was certainly not dirty, and that's going to be hard to call that one dirty. As we have an incident with Kyle Stokes just completely getting it wrong. The brakes on these cars are very, very temperamental, so it doesn't take much to have what seems like an innocent accident to go completely wrong and end up out in the dirt.
Well, that might look like a bit of an unfamiliar accident to a lot of our viewers, but I can assure you, if you've seen me driving, that is not an unfamiliar accident at all. But we'll continue focusing on Mal McMullen at the moment, who's trying to make himself up from not just 6 spots, but maybe the entire pack in front, because this gaggle of cars has really closed up. This is Brady Myers, Chris Coxhead, Jack Boyd, Jordan Ross, Mal McMullen, and Corey Preston, all in a single pack. So with just 10 laps to go, this is the field that we have, and what a field it is. All of these drivers, like you did mention earlier, could be fighting for race wins, but at the moment they're just scrapping it out, not only for traction out of Southern Loop, but for 7th place at the moment. But we will focus on how this is going to go between Chris Coxhead and the driver up his inside at Stoner Curve of Jack Boyd, as they all dart onto the brakes as late as they dare. You can see they're trying to go around the outside for Jack Boyd, just not happening. Actually a bit sideways there on the exit for Chris Coxhead. Does that open the door at Siberia? It doesn't, but John Ross is going to try around the outside, and that actually might lose him a spot to Mal McMullen, but McMullen not able to get the traction. So this is a great demonstration of just some of the different lines these drivers are taking through so many of these corners.
as we have a modem simulation replay of what I believe was a retirement for Steve Jansen, who is having a quiet race, just runs wide at turn 2 and looks like he just parks it in the sand. A real shame for Steve Jansen.
Yeah, absolutely. Not what Steve would have wanted. Of course, a real mainstay of the championship, but he's decided that his time in the gravel trap's over and he's going to continue on the track, which is good to see. But of course, Steve has been around for a lot of years in this championship, and we have seen him many times, and can definitely get the good result on his day. But unfortunately, today's just not his day. But there are still 9 long laps to go for this battle for position number 7 at the moment. Sam Blacklock has broken away from that battle for 3rd, but 3rd, 4th, and 5th has closed up as well. They're still not within passing range, but worth noting as the race does come to a close, I should say. I'm getting my words into a bit of a mix now as well, but this race is far from over for a lot of drivers. Brady Myers is beginning to skip away a little bit from Chris Coxhead, but the battle behind is still not scrapping away too much. As you can see, Jack Boyd sideways through Stoner Curve, and they're all concertinaing into Honda Corner. So this field just a very interesting little melee at the moment. They're all just closing in on one another, but no one really able to make moves. But Jordan Ross goes for a bit of a drift session there, and that could compromise him out of Siberia. But Mark McMullen not able to get the traction as they try and make something happen into Hayshed. But I don't think McMullen is just quite close enough. So Corey Preston will have to sit behind as well. So they all fire their way now through Lukey Heights, this long left-hander, which is very tricky because it has a big rise in elevation up the top as well, which does lead to an opportunity that McMullen thought about. Couldn't quite do anything with it though.
Just amazing how that big sideways moment for Corey Preston, but that little moment from Jordan Ross has really detached him from the back of Jack Boyd and has left him open, of course, to Mullen and Corey. Now they have to work twice as hard just to catch back up to Jack Boyd to try and get to the front of this queue and hopefully get where Brady Myers is streaking away from the pack that he was once unable to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brady's doing a good job at the moment, but I mean, we said at the start of the race that Brady would have really been targeting to try and beat Sam Blacklock. Out of nowhere, he finds himself some 10 seconds behind Blacklock, who currently runs in 2nd. Brady Myers down in 7th place, and well, we're getting a good shot there of your top 5 drivers at the moment. You can see Andrew Gilliam just falling back a little bit from the top 4, but Brady Myers definitely not falling back at all. He's pulling away from the drivers chasing him down, and Jordan Ross has recovered that margin that he needed to Jack Boyd, but still interesting to see as Sean Thompson is up the inside there, and Contact made a beautiful 2-wheel moment there from the One Performance racing car. But I mean, through Honda Corner, you probably want all 4 tires on the ground, not just 2.
Unless you're here for the MotoGP, then 2 wheels is just fine. But these are anything but. The four tires on these cars barely provide any grip whatsoever, as these guys have shown plenty of times having to go onto the grass as well.
Well, I probably think that all 4 tyres on the V8 Supercar equals 1 MotoGP tyre, such as the grip levels of these cars. They move around so much, but not moving around all too much for Jake Burton. He's still stretching his margin out front. In fact, though, he wasn't the fastest car around last time. It was actually Brady Myers, the only car below the 90-second bracket. So Brady showing that the pace was there in that car. It really was, but just not able to deliver it lap after lap. But as we head on to lap number 27 now for our race leaders, it was actually Jackson Susan Harlow with the quickest lap as he closes in by 0.3 of a second on Sam Blacklock ahead. So they're all closing in a bit now. So Jackson Susan Harlow has a point to prove, and Sam Blacklock might not be able to get his 2nd place trophy just yet.
No, certainly not. Another big slide from Jackson. Now, he has been in the wars today. He does have, I think, relatively old tyres compared to Michael Talianchitz, but somehow Michael is holding on extremely well. Despite the fact that Jackson has noticeably more pace than Michael, he simply can't get the pass done. And I think part of that is due to the fact that Michael is being able to keep up with Sam Blacklock, which is a surprise. I wonder if there's any fuel saving or tyre preservation going on in the Logitech G Altus Esports Falcon.
Well, there could be, of course. Sam is not a fan of fuel saving. Every time I mentioned, is there any fuel saving planned for tonight's race, he definitely gives me a response that I cannot say, as this is a family-friendly broadcast. But nonetheless, he might have to be saving just a little bit. But he did have a relatively long pit stop, especially compared to the 2 drivers behind. apart from Jackson Suzlin Harlow, who actually had one of the longest stops at 17.1 seconds. But interestingly, 17.1 seconds for Jackson Suzlin Harlow, 1.5 seconds quicker was Michael Taliancic. So I have to wonder if he's having a fuel savings contact. Huge contact between Jordan Ross and that was Jack Boyd, who is completely gone at turn number 1. We'll have to get a modem simulation replay up on screen because that was massive. Shades of Cameron McConville through that first corner, and we'll see it on screen right now if you missed it the first time, because that was huge contact there, and it all happened with a horrific run out of that final corner for Jack Boyd. Jordan Ross there just diving up the inside. We'll see if we can get a trackside view, as we can see right there. Just turns in and bang! Straight off of the first corner at a huge rate of knots. And, well, there's not much to find out there apart from a whole sea of gravel. And that is just the worst feeling, isn't it, Ross? When you turn into a corner, you make contact, and out of nowhere, you're not turning into the corner anymore.
Oh, 100%. It looks like Jordan actually delayed the turn in ever so slightly to keep Jack where he wanted him, which is completely legal. And then Jack took the bait and went for the turn in, and unfortunately went sent through the grass.
Yep, so not ideal at all for him, but nonetheless, Jordan Ross does benefit a spot out of that, so he isn't going to mind all too much. But the point I was making earlier is that Taliancic was 1.5 seconds quicker in the pit stop, so I wonder if he is having to fuel save just a little bit, which is going to be quite interesting when he's trying to fend off some very quick drivers just behind him. So Michael Taliancic really could be up against it here.
I'm sure Michael has already done the fuel saving that he needed to do with that quick pit stop. He's very smart behind the numbers, and he's very good at being able to save fuel. So as someone who likes to save fuel, I certainly doff my hat. It's got him in a strong position, a much stronger position than his outright pace would let him to be. So he's probably okay with dropping a position or two. Remember, he's already up from 9th place, and if he says he's going to finish behind the enigma of JSH, he probably won't complain as he goes for a big dive. Can't quite make the move, despite being able to look like he can get on the brakes that little bit better, but just can't quite get it done. And look how close they are to Sam now. He's unable to skip away despite the fact that there's a little bit of battling going on behind.
Yeah, well, the margin currently lies at just 0.6 of a second, and we know that you can gain 0.2 of a second on the slipstream alone down the front straight. So if they can just match his pace around the rest of the lap, that's just 0.2 there. That only takes 3 laps for them to well and truly have a shot at passing that Logitech G Altus Esports car. So Sam looking a little bit vulnerable at the moment, so he really does have to make a move stick, and he knows that. You can see there, all the way out to the pit wall, trying to break the slipstream. He knows he can't afford to let them get too close, but out of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place cars, he was 0.2 slower than Taliancic and 0.1 of a second slower than Jackson Suzlin Harlow. So Sam Blacklock falling into the clutches of the Pursuit Sim Racing and TTL Esports cars.
I'm wondering if he's keeping enough in his back pocket to be able to fend them off for the last 4 laps. We don't have long to go, but his saving grace could come in the form of JSH as he continues to pressure Taliancic. Andrew Gilliam has surprisingly fallen off the back of this queue, despite his electric pace at the start. So I'm not sure why the race has gone so south for young Andrew Gilliam.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting because he actually has lap younger tyres than his teammate Michael Taliancic, but just not able to do anything with it. And we just did see quickly just on screen Jack Boyd really trying to make something happen there with a great pass into turns 1 and 2, but didn't manage to make it stick. So that's a spot there made for him, but it hasn't been the race that he would have wanted in that Gone Rogue Motorsports car. Guy Leach though still applying the pressure as they head onto lap number 30. So just 3 laps to go when Jake Burton crosses the line this time around. So this race is coming to a close, so for these drivers, if they need to make a move, they've really got to start making it now.
And I'm sure Michael is trying to plan something. I don't think he was expecting to be this high up, but I'm sure he's got an idea for what he wants to do with Sam. As for Jackson, I think he's just throwing everything he can at him to see if he can get a pass and make it stick, because you can almost guarantee if he gets it, if he puts that Falcon ahead of that Commodore, it's gonna stay ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But the issue for Jackson Suzlin Harlow is he has the 2nd oldest tyres in the entire field, but it's not stopping him at the moment, is he? Because he is well and truly up the inside at Southern Loop, and it's all about getting the traction down. Can he out-drag the Holden Commodore and it looks like he will quite comfortably through Stone and Curve. He gets the job done, has to defend the inside. Talyancic wants to retaliate, try and make something happen around the outside, but cannot do it. So position gains for Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, but now the challenge, 2.5 laps to go to catch and pass the other Falcon in front.
I think he's got the pace to do it, but probably not the time. But what's interesting is we saw that Michael isn't exactly on a ideal strategy, but the way he's executed it compared to everyone else has been absolutely phenomenal. That's why he finds himself in such a strong position. Only just now is Jackson starting to find the benefits of pitting later. He's really ranging up on the back of Sam Blacklock, and with 2 laps to go as they pass the stripes, only time will tell if he will actually be able to get it done.
The gap stands at 0.8 of a second, as you can see down the bottom of your screen there. So Sam Blacklock has to try and hold that. Has to be at least 4.5 of a second within Jackson Suzlin-Harlow's pace to hold on to that time. But we know how quick Jackson Suzlin-Harlow can be. Some are really supporting him back at TCL. They say that he can be a star of the future. Well, if you want to be a star of the future, you have to beat some of the current stars. And of course, Sam Blacklock used to be a rising star for Trans-Tasman Racing. So these two drivers are two of the drivers peaked, or sorry, should I say actually talked about to really be contenders in V8 Scops over the next few seasons. But right now, Jackson Suzlin-Harlow has to defend from Talyancic. But Talyancic not able to make anything happen at the moment. But that just hurt him just a little bit. Having to go defensive in a Honda corner. That means that Sam Blacklock extends that gap by about 0.2 of a second. The challenge just got harder for Jackson Suzlin-Harlow.
It's tightening up, and then the battle is back on between Chris Coxhead and Jordan Ross. So fizzled out for a little bit, but now it's right back on. They're battling for a spot just inside the top 10. Looks like 8th and 9th to be exact.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how that battle transpires. And of course, John Ross got a relatively clean car, which is good to see. Of course, we saw him take avoiding action for a few incidents off into the gravel earlier in the race. So hasn't really got too many bumpers out so far in the race. Maybe now it's the time to do it as he dives up the inside. And now is the time to get the bumpers out. Contact between the two into MG and trying to make their way onto the power through turn number 11. I think John Ross there just trying to get the crisscross. Couldn't quite do it though. And has to sit behind the Zuva racing car for yet another lap. 0.2 of a second is the margin for Jordan Ross, but he's got a great exit now. You can see closing and closing, left or right. That is the answer. The answer is right, and he's going to see what he can do up the inside to turn number 1 for the V8 Sleuth car. He has to try and make it happen. A beautiful crisscross there through turn number 1, but now it's the inside in the southern loop for Jordan Ross, but couldn't do anything with it. But with a bumper, maybe he can, but still not able to do it as these two fight their way onto the power. But I think for now, the V8 Sleuth car has got that position, so we'll see if he can hold it all the way to Honda corner, because we know how strong Jordan Ross can be on the brakes. Brakes a little bit early though to try and position the car, but couldn't do anything again against the number 12 car. So for Jordan Ross, it has to continue or happen somewhere else on the circuit, as we get a bit of a shot there of Jake Burton, who enjoys a 9.2 second lead at the moment. So it has been all Jake Burton's way so far in this race. The 33 car, currently a privateer, doing a little bit of work for Positive Sim Racing, however, is going to have a dominant display here at Phillip Island. A beautiful drive there from Jake Burton. He rounds the final corner, and round number 2 of the iRacing official V8 Supercar Series Championship goes to the privateer driver in the number 2 car. It looks like Sam Blacklock will comfortably, in the end, hold on to second place. And Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, he tried to wrestle it away, gets P3, but check out the formation finish for the Pursuit Sim Racing cars in 4th and 5th. A double top 5 is great work for those guys, as there's actually a swap of positions there between Guy Leach and Wayne Burke on the final lap. So they're still fighting it out just a little bit, and Wayne Burke loses that spot. So not the race Wayne Burke would have wanted, of course. He was very competitive, 7th in qualifying, but spun twice in the early stages of the race.
That was actually a redress from Wayne Burke. Guy and Wayne got into each other unintentionally at MG, so Wayne was just letting Guy have the position.
All right, well, we might actually just see that on screen now, as we can see there, Wayne Burke trying to make something happen, and actually very wide there through that long left-hander at Lukey Heights, and Wayne Burke there just, that's a fair bit of contact, and honestly, I think that's just hard racing, but Wayne Burke felt the need to redress that, so fair play. And that's something we always want to encourage, is if you feel like you've made a mistake or you've hit someone, off the circuit quite unfairly, redress the spot. Everyone's happy. Everyone can go on with their day. That's what we would like to see. But we will get your race results up on screen. And after 50 minutes and 6 seconds, Jake Burton is your race winner ahead of Sam Blacklock, Jackson Suslan-Harlow, Michael Teliansic, and Andrew Gilliam, your top 5. A great result there for those, as Harley Haber, Brady Myers, and Chris Coxhead is your top 8 positions as we scroll to the next page for Jordan Ross and Marlon McMullen, your top 10.
In 11th place, we have Corey Preston up 5 positions and Job Stewart up 7 from 19th. A very quiet drive from the Pursuit Sim Racer. Then we have Jack Boyd, who was caught out in the weeds with that tangle with Jordan Ross. Then we have Guy Leach, who made up 8 positions from 22nd. The wily and experienced Guy Leach making his way into the top 15. Wayne Burke had very much a race to forget down in 15th. Sean Thompson in 16th. Then we have Craig Jones in 17th, up from 23rd, so a solid run for the 111 esports driver. Then we have Greg Sharp for the Stealth Simforce in 18th. Lee Day coming home in 19th, another very solid drive for him. And Kyle Stokes, a fairly dismal day for the Evolution Racing Team driver, from 13th down to 20th.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett Loxton rounds it home in 21st place, with Damien Johnston the last of your drivers who are registered on the lead lap, with Steve Jansen, Brian Borg, and, well, Christian Smart didn't really get to race all too much with connection issues throughout. But nonetheless, a great result for your top 10 drivers. Everyone else other than the top 10, unfortunately, just a lot of contact and a few little incidents that a few drivers will probably look back on and think, well, without that, perhaps I could have snuck into that top 10. But another great showing here for the Monday Night V8 Supercar Series, and it is sure to continue next week as the series heads on for the next round, which will be taking place at the Monza circuit. And Ross, we've seen the V8s at Monza before. It gets crazy very quickly.
Oh, it's an absolutely magnificent combo with these big, heavy V8 supercars and the incredible draft opportunities that really open up strategy and, of course, reward the brave Daniel Ricciardo wannabes going into turn 1 and the Variante Alta, the second chicane. So we'll be seeing some very interesting tactics, I think, next week.
Yeah, we absolutely could, but that's not all from us here at SimSpeed this week. Of course, on Tuesday, tomorrow, we will have the Australian Sprint Car Championship as well, starting off at 8 p.m. AST. That should be fantastic to see those drivers firing it around on the dirt once again. And then, well, it depends if you're in America or in the Australian place. I swear I can English, guys. I swear I can. But we have the Geodesic GoPro Championship as well. And if you enjoyed Phillip Island, well, you're in luck, because that is where round number 2 of that championship is taking place as well. It should be a fantastic show. And of course, on the weekend, the Sim Racing Online Premier Series is taking place as well. So we have a fantastic week here on SimSpeed TV and the iRacing Esports Network. But from behalf of myself and Ross, who very much thank you for joining me here today for this broadcast, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time. This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are going to want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?